relaxing in your room and streaming some good tunes when suddenly the network's down. You try rebooting your phone, but there's still no connection. Out of nowhere, your sister barges into your room in panic. She's screaming something about rings. Boxing rings? Wedding rings? Rings on the tub? She's not making any sense. So she drags you out of the house and shows you the sky. You take a look up and see streaks of objects forming miles above the Earth's surface. Her connection seems to work. The two of you check online what's going on, and everywhere the same thing is making headlines. Rings are suddenly appearing in our sky. #EarthRings is breaking the record, and videos are going super viral. Your sister can't help but join the crowd and takes a bunch of selfies with the sky. You run to the TV in your living room to check out the news. Scientists are warning about a coming catastrophe and explaining that everyone should remain indoors. Even though it's a cloudless day in the middle of summer, the weather seems to be getting colder and colder. Suddenly, the signal's cut off. Other channels show nothing either. Then you see your neighbors packing their bags and heading out. Others follow suit. You hesitate a bit, but decide to do the same in the end. Your sister is still outside taking selfies when you urge her to come along with you to seek some answers. The two of you hop in your car and drive out into the city. The rings above seem to be gaining more mass with each second. You and your sister are getting colder and colder. You head to the university to see if anyone knows anything, but there's no one there. Only one parked car in the lot. And it's a good thing you recognize that car. You and your sister rush in and find the astronomy professor doing some quick calculations and trying to figure out why all this is happening. He urges you to take seats and begins explaining. No one knows what this is all about, but it's limiting the sun's exposure on Earth, which explains why it's getting colder by the minute. Why the rings are getting thicker is a mystery too. On Saturn, the rings are made up of ice and rock particles. They can be as small as an ant or the size of a bus. The rocks could be leftover meteor debris or even remnants of dwarf planets. But since Earth is so close to the Sun, ice wouldn't be something you'd find floating above us. With all these rocks piled up, they block the Earth's access to Sun to warm us up and give us light. The professor goes on to explain that Earth will enter a new ice age, and oxygen levels will deplete within a year's time unless those newborn rings disappear anytime soon. This also explains why there's no connection. The rocks that form the rings are hitting and breaking the satellites. Suddenly, you hear a loud ringing noise outside. The three of you head outside and see a helicopter blasting an alarm with a red light flashing. "Everyone to your homes now! This is not a drill! Everyone, head home!" You get in your car with your sister, but the roads are jammed. You have to go on foot, which will take 2 hours. There's no way anyone can remain outdoors. You venture out seeing everyone stuck on the road. They're all arguing with each other and causing chaos. You try not to get caught in the middle of anything and sneak your way to the highway. With the rings getting thicker, less sunlight is breaking through. This Ice Age info is stuck in your head, chilling you even more. You take a deep breath and see a thin mist coming out of your mouth. The sky is getting darker and you're still not home yet. Your sister is tired and needs to rest, but you urge her to move on. You find an abandoned clothes shop and head inside. The store clerks are actually giving away thick jackets for everyone to wear. You grab a couple and slip them on. Only 1 more hour to get home, but the sky is completely dark. There's no way you and your sister can go out in such conditions, so you decide to camp up in the clothes shop. They set up a mini bonfire in the middle of the shop and create makeshift sleeping bags with the rest of the unused clothes. Luckily, there's enough food to feed everyone, including you and your sister. It's the middle of the night. The fire goes out, and you can't see outside the shop. You head to the window and open it up. A huge pile of snow spills in and wakes everyone up. It's the middle of August, and a snowstorm formed overnight. Everyone is freezing, and they start the fire anew. There's no radio or any way to find out what's happening. The wind picks up and starts shaking the shop. Things start falling off the shelves, but you and everyone else are cozy by the fire. The next day, you look outside and see the entire area covered in snow. You live in a sunny place where it barely rains, and the rings in the outer atmosphere are even bigger than last night. Out of nowhere, a truck filled with people pulls over, and the driver tells you there's a shelter for everyone some miles away. The truck has chains all over the tires and is equipped for the worst snowy conditions. Even though it's morning, the sky is pretty dark. You and everyone else hop in. Abandoned cars, some with their doors still open, are scattered all over. The truck drives around them or just smashes through the ones in the way. It pulls over next to an ambulance and takes all the equipment to help the ones in need. You drive past your neighborhood and see your entire house covered in snow. The large tree in your backyard has fallen under the weight of the snow and broken the roof, allowing snow to flood in. The truck speeds through and gets to the shelter, which, to your surprise, is the mall. You get out and see many of the townspeople being led to various stores that have now turned into dorms and health units. You're left in a sports store with a bunch of other people. Your sister has also been able to bunk with you, and to your luck, you see the professor helping out some people. But shortly after that, a loud explosion blasts through the mall and shatters glass screens. Everyone ducks for cover. You see people running outside. You head out and see a large metallic object lying in front of the mall entrance. There are people crowding the entire area, so it's not easy to see what all the fuss is about. But after getting a closer look, you find out it's a satellite fallen from orbit. It crashed in the front yard and made the boom. There were also reports of other satellites crashing on Earth in the most random places. That means all communication has been wiped out of the map. You run back inside the mall to await what happens next. You look at your sister in fear, not knowing that the new Ice Age has just begun. One year later, you're relaxing in your bunker when your sister barges in, freaking out. The rings are still there, but it's something else now. You run outside and see everyone gathering around and looking at the sky. Within a year, temperatures have dropped to freeze the entirety of the Earth's surface. Deserts and tropical jungles have turned into icy wastelands. More than half of the wildlife went extinct, and trees are as rare as a four-leaf clover, which means oxygen levels have dropped significantly. Most of the population, or what's remaining of it, live with oxygen tanks, with scientists still trying to crack the case of the rings. Exactly what the professor predicted. But up in the sky, rocks seem to be falling down and crashing all over. It starts off far away, but then the rocks begin to fall down close by. You and everyone else run back into the mall, which has been covered with a layer of metal to keep the warmth inside. It should be pretty safe in there. If the rocks are falling down, that means the rings are dissipating. Suddenly, you're full of hope that the Ice Age might be over soon. Do you know what the third brightest object in the night sky is? If you said the International Space Station, you're absolutely right. And the coolest thing? You can sign up for a special service and you'll get a text every time the ISS is traveling over your location. And if it happens at night, you can see it with the unaided eye. But be quick, because the station is very fast. It moves at a speed of 5 miles per second and circles our planet every 90 minutes. If you moved at such a speed, you'd be able to make a round trip to the moon within a day. At the same time, the ISS isn't the fastest human-built object. This title belongs to the Parker Solar Probe that travels around Venus and the Sun at a speed of 430,000 miles per hour. On the bright side, astronauts on the ISS see a sunrise and sunset 16 times every 24 hours. The International Space Station is a true record breaker. It's the largest human-made object in space. It's 357 feet long from end to end, which is about the same length as a soccer field. It also weighs about 450 tons. 8 spacecraft can dock at the ISS at the same time. The working and living space of the station is bigger than a 6-bedroom house. Astronauts have 6 sleeping quarters, a gym, 2 bathrooms, and a beautiful 360-degree view bay window. And now, let's imagine what your life would be like if you were an astronaut on the International Space Station. Now, for one thing, you'd be able to do some cool things there, like throwing boomerangs. Once, an astronaut threw a boomerang inside the International Space Station, and it returned to him. So, just remember, as long as there's some air, even weightlessness won't stop you from having a bit of fun. On the ISS, you would never have to deal with disgusting smells. There's a specially trained person who smells everything astronauts take with them to space. It's done to protect them from unpleasant odors. The thing is that you can't really air the room out there if you don't like how it smells inside. That's why NASA is very careful about what kinds of smells are allowed to pass through. You'd also have to get rid of your clothes instead of washing them after each use. To bring a mere 1 pound of load to the International Space Station costs more than $10,000. That's why it costs less to throw your clothes away when they get dirty than to waste water on washing them. While sleeping, you'd have exceptionally good airflow around you. Otherwise, the carbon dioxide you'd exhale would form a bubble around your head and you'd get oxygen deprived. But what would you do on the ISS? Most likely, it would be space-related research. Astronauts on the station not only explore the possibility of future space travel, but also conduct all kinds of studies and explore the effect of microgravity on the human body. Oh, and speaking of microgravity, people often think that in space you experience zero gravity, hence the weightlessness astronauts feel on the International Space Station. But that's not exactly true. Gravity is one of the most important forces that exist in the universe. Thanks to it, the Moon can orbit the Earth, and the Sun doesn't float away from our home Milky Way galaxy. But astronauts on the ISS experience not full-fledged but microgravity, which means very small gravity. Earth's gravity on the International Space Station is only around 10 to 12% weaker than the gravity on the planet's surface. But astronauts are constantly in free fall. The spacecraft, the people inside, and all the objects aboard keep falling forward, not down, but around our planet, following a specific orbit. And since they're all falling together, the crew and the stuff inside seem to be floating. That's why astronauts can move things as heavy as hundreds of pounds with their fingertips. And even though microgravity is often called zero gravity, they're very different things. Anyway, on your way to the International Space Station, you'd be wearing a bright orange spacesuit. Its color is called International Orange, and it has the same shade as the paint that coats Tokyo Tower in Japan or the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco. But once you reach the vast expanse of space, you'd swap orange for Snow White. See, the thing is, the orange suit is equipped with the stuff that can help astronauts survive if something goes wrong during the launch or landing of the spaceship. For example, a regular pumpkin suit has flares, medications, survival gear, a radio, and a parachute. As for the white bulky spacesuits, those are EVA, which stand for Extravehicular Activities suits. Their purpose is totally different from that of the orange suits. Astronauts put on EVA suits when going on a spacewalk. Such an outfit can protect them from the unfriendly conditions of outer space, with its extreme temperatures and the near vacuum. Besides, the white suit can prevent small debris from hurting space travelers. Oh, by the way, if you needed to scratch your nose while wearing your EVA suit, you would use a patch of Velcro inside the helmet. The lack of gravity also makes sneezing inside a spacesuit a serious problem. If you absolutely had to sneeze while on a spacewalk, you'd have to bend your head downward and sneeze into your chest. Otherwise, your visor would have to be equipped with tiny windshield wipers. Now in space, you'd often see random flashes of light, and those wouldn't be hallucinations. Cosmic rays hitting your optic nerve would create such an effect. You don't see similar flashes here on Earth because the magnetosphere doesn't let cosmic rays reach you. Before going to space, you'd have some underwater training. It's supposed to simulate zero gravity, but in fact, it has nothing in common with being in outer space. So the main purpose of this training is to see how future astronauts can deal with extreme environments. Oh, and later, during space adaptation, you might feel, well, let's say, weird. Around 50 to 75% of astronauts have highly unpleasant symptoms, such as vertigo, headaches, nausea, and overall tiredness. Luckily, everything usually gets back to normal within 72 hours. Before you were chosen to fly to space, you'd have to get through incredibly tough competition. According to NASA, they accept only 8 applicants out of 6,000. On top of that, the selection process takes around 18 months. Now, if you felt homesick on a mission and started crying, your tears wouldn't flow down your face. Instead, they'd gather into thick blobs of liquid around your eyes because the water surface tension would hold your tears together. You'd have to remember to attach yourself to something before falling asleep. Otherwise, you can easily float away from the spot where you went to bed and bump into a hard surface. That's why astronauts usually rest in sleeping bags in a small crew cabin. Another issue you'd have to deal with would be taking a shower in microgravity conditions, and it's not an easy feat. Astronauts use a shower in an enclosed cylinder which keeps water from floating away. They use a no-rinse shampoo, spray themselves with water to rinse off the soap, and finally use a vacuum hose that pulls inside all the water left on their body. You'd have to get used to a dramatic change in your diet. You'd have 3 meals a day, nothing outstanding here. But instead of sitting down to enjoy your lunch, you'd float around. Your meal would consist of some dehydrated and canned food items, and it might take a lot of time to finish it, since you'd have to be very careful not to let your food get away in the process. Now, imagine needing a haircut. After all, you'd spend no less than half a year on the ISS. To change your image, you'd have to use special clippers with a vacuum attached to them. Okay, here you are, in the middle of the ocean. It's endless, but you can't see it, because there's a thick fog all around you. Dense clouds hide the huge but dim sun. Is it day or night? You don't know. There's only a gray haze around you. You're alone. Even if you try to swim down, after several hours, you still won't be able to see the bottom of the ocean. And that's a typical water planet for you. I know, sounded kind of dark, but it's not that bad. These water worlds are more interesting than they may seem, so let's take a look at them. The ocean planet is a planet that consists, as you might have guessed, mainly of water, ice, and maybe some rocks. Think of the Earth's oceans. Its horrifying depths, the Mariana Trench, and all that. And now, can you guess how much space all the water on Earth takes up? 0.025%, exactly. Now, just try to imagine a world of 40 to 60% water. If you dive in there, the depth can exceed 60 miles. Compared to that, the 6-mile depth of our Mariana Trench sounds like nothing. And yeah, the pressure there will be enormous. It can reach up to 20,000 Earth atmospheres. Very crushing. Now, it may sound scary, but it still would be great to find out more about these planets. Fortunately, according to scientists' calculations, there may be a lot of such planets in our galaxy alone. Well, you don't have to go far. You can find these water guys even in our solar system. Not planets, of course, but moons. Jupiter has Ganymede and Callisto, and Saturn has Titan and Enceladus. The ocean can reach up to 30% of the mass of these moons, although it isn't clear whether these oceans are covered with a thick crust of ice. But we've discovered quite a few full-fledged ocean planets. This is because the conditions in which these planets may exist are very specific. For example, this planet should be somewhere 6 to 8 times larger than the Earth. If it's smaller, it'll have a rocky surface. But if it's bigger, it'll turn into a gas giant. At the same time, it must be in the habitable zone of its star. A little further, and the planet immediately turns into an icy giant or a cold super-Earth. So yeah, these guys are very picky. We first started exploring these planets back in the 1970s. However, since then, we found only a couple of them, but they're still very interesting. The first planet is Gliese 1214b. It was the very first ocean planet that we discovered. Initially, the scientists noticed only a small dim dot. This dot turned out to be the red dwarf star Gliese 1214. An unremarkable, completely ordinary star that's 5 times smaller than our Sun and 300 times dimmer. Scientists wouldn't worry about it at all, but back in 2009, they noticed that this star had one single planet, and this planet turned out to be quite strange. This super-Earth was 2.5 times bigger than our Earth and 6.5 times heavier, but at the same time, it had a very, very small density and about the same gravity as our planet. In other words, there were almost no rocks and metals on it. But it wasn't a gas giant either. So there was only one option left. It was covered in water and ice. And that's how we discovered the first ocean planet. Well, actually, we can only assume that it consists of water. That's what the mathematical calculations say. In reality, this planet is quite confusing. It's difficult to explore, and so far, scientists haven't been able to find anything there. No hydrogen, no helium, no water, nada. That's because the outer layer of the atmosphere of this planet is very dense, and it perfectly hides its composition. But even so, it's probably a water world. Gliese 1214b is very close to its star. It's only 0.014 astronomical units away, which is less than the distance between the Moon and us. The year there lasts about 36 hours, and the temperatures, to put it mildly, are just wild. Scientists suggest that the average temperature there can reach 250 to 535 degrees Fahrenheit. Woo, that's hot. Remember the creepy description from the beginning? Well, actually, spending time on Gliese 1214b would be a little different, more like swimming in a steam boiler. Because of such gigantic temperatures, the ocean on the surface will be constantly in a state close to boiling without actually reaching it. So, imagine that you're descending to the surface of this planet, flying through clouds of steam, and then you suddenly find yourself in the water. What? But when did it happen? Well, that's because the boundary between steam and water on Gliese 1214b will be very blurred. Of course, you won't be able to swim to the bottom of this ocean, but most likely, this bottom is covered with a very thick layer of so-called hot ice. It's like regular ice, but it doesn't really care about the laws of physics, so it just doesn't melt even at gigantic temperatures. And the thickness of this ice can reach as much as 3,000 miles. So that's it for the creepy Gliese 1214b, and not an Airbnb in sight. Now, although we can't 100% guarantee that it's a water world, we still have another candidate for this position. A newly discovered planet called TOI 1452b. This planet, located in the Dragon constellation, is almost 100 light-years away from us. It was discovered using the TESS telescope by a group of researchers from the University of Montreal. This planet also belongs to the class of super-Earths. It's 7 times larger than our planet, but 48 times heavier. Again, all this is at a very low density. Because of this, scientists have suggested that almost the entire planet consists of a giant ocean. Here, we were a little luckier. This world won't be just a giant puddle and some thick ice. On this planet, there's probably a rocky surface deep under the water, just like in a typical ocean. Don't get too excited though, this ocean will certainly be very different from what we're used to. TOI 1452b also orbits a small red dwarf, and not even one, but 2 at once. At the same time, if the previous planet was close to its sun, then this one, on the contrary, is very, very far away. It's 2.5 times farther from its stars than Pluto is from the sun, and it moves at great speed. A year there lasts only 11 days. But we still don't know many things about this planet. We'll probably get some new information when scientists observe it from the James Webb Telescope. Well, that's it. Wait, did you expect something else? Alright, I know the question that bothers you the most. Can there be life? Well, this is a difficult question. We all know that water means life, and besides, these planets are in the habitable zones of their stars. So, potentially, yes, there might be life. Not some full-fledged civilizations, of course, but bacteria, fish, and some creepy giant monsters. I mean, why not? However, this is very unlikely. Water alone isn't enough to create life, even though it's very important. There should also be some microelements and some minerals. And unfortunately, for most water planets, the composition will only consist of water and very thick ice. There won't be any minerals there. But don't give up. There's still some probability. First of all, there are meteorites and comets. They can bring the necessary minerals to the planet. The more often they crash into it, the higher the probability that they'll bring something like this into the ocean and thus create life. Secondly, TOI 1452b actually has these minerals. Yes, we don't know how deep the rocky bottom is located there. But if it exists, then surely something could have originated there. Let's hope that new research with powerful telescopes will allow us to find out the truth. And who knows? Maybe one day we'll be able to visit such a planet ourselves. That's it for today. So hey, if you pacified your curiosity, then give the video a like and share it with your friends. Or if you want more, just click on these videos and stay on the bright side.